Day. I am Chris James. I am President and CEO of the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development. We're located close to Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States. We also serve all of the United States, including Hawaii. So we have 9 offices throughout the U.S. As well as teams in each one of those areas. I'll turn it over to Erin Abrahamson. She's my chief of staff for the National Center. But before that, I'm originally from Cherokee, North Carolina, for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina. And I'll turn it over to Erin to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erin Abrahamson. I am the Chief of Staff here at the National Center. And I've been working here under Chris for almost 8 years now. I am originally from Washington State. I am an enrolled member of the Caldwell Confederated Tribes of Washington State. And I'll pass it back over to Chris.
Great. Thank you, Erin. I'm also going to introduce Kip Richie. I'm going to give a little bit of background and more of a formal introduction in just a few minutes for Kip, but Kip is also on the call and I'll give him a little more background. But I first wanted to sort of set the stage of why, Missy did a great job and Paul sort of talking about our relationship with New Zealand, but wanted to expand on that just a bit. In last August of 2024, I had the chance to join some of you folks in New Zealand and to the Amotai conference. That was really the start of developing strong partnerships and relationships in New Zealand. We also, around the same time, received some funding from the United States Small Business Administration, and that is to really support some trade missions to various countries around the world. And that's also supporting folks that want to maybe come into the United States, as well as to do some workshops and also really connecting indigenous to indigenous businesses. And that's really our goal. This is a very early stage one, is really just introducing ourselves, talking a little bit about what a tribal business is. Some of you on the phone, you may already, you're already working in the United States. You may already have some great partnerships within the tribes, but then there's some people that may really be curious. So I'll ask Kip a few questions about what his company does and sort of the vastness of his company in just a minute. And then lastly, I'll talk a little bit about some of the questions that Missy brought to me, just talking about really strengthening our indigenous trade and investments, how we can collaborate better, and really talk more about the next phase of this opportunity. So first of all, thank you very much. It's so good to see people. Let me introduce my colleague and friend, as well as one of my bosses, Mr. Kip Richie. He's an enrolled member of the Forest County Potawatomi Tribe and serves as Chief Executive Officer of Poaty Ventures. So we're going to talk a little bit of what that means. But Kip, why don't you introduce yourself and in your own way?
Absolutely. Bonjour. Vizukaz, Kip Richie, Ndoman Nagize, Potawatomi and Dow, Ndojaba, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hello, my name is Kip Richie. I am Forest County Potawatomi. My clan is Evo, and I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you this afternoon, and join Chris and Erin as well. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Kip, and it's really great to have you join a little bit of the short notice as well. So we really appreciate that because I know you're a very busy man. Kip, give us a little bit of background. Just how long have you been? Why don't you first? Let's start a little bit about the tribe. Tell us.
Sure.
You sort of geographically mentioned where it is, but tell us about the size, how many members the Forest County Potawatomi has.
Thanks, Chris. Absolutely. So we're one of, I think, 574 federally recognized tribes in the United States. We're located in northern Wisconsin, about 5 hours north of Chicago. There are 11 tribes in the state of Wisconsin. Our tribe, Forest County Pottawatomie, has about 1,700 tribal members. And we were recognized as part of the Indian Reorganization Act back in 1934. And up until about 30 years ago or 35 years ago, we were the poorest tribe in the state of Wisconsin. We were fortunate to get involved in the Indian gaming business and have really flourished during that time since the early 90s. And it's really been in the last 20 years that we've created this economic development arm for the tribe, which is really to diversify the tribe's economy. Today, we're about 750 employees, about a $500 million operation. We've got about 15 businesses and 43 joint ventures in the federal government contracting space. So we do a large amount of our businesses in that space. We also have commercial businesses involved in construction management, engineering, IT, and data center operations, convenience store operations, real estate development, emerging technologies, and electrical services contracting. We also have a passive portfolio where we partnered with other tribes to invest and diversify, and been really active in building our business, not only throughout the Midwest, but really nationally, in some cases globally. So the opportunity to speak with you today and explore opportunities in New Zealand is really very interesting to us. So it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Well, thank you, Kip. And I think I did want to just realize, what a perfect person to be on this call when we're talking about what a tribal enterprise looks like. I mean, 15 separate companies, 700 employees, and you're doing work all over, I'm assuming all over the United States, but definitely possibly you have other ventures all over the world?
We do. We do work in Guam, in Okinawa, Japan. We also have done some work in Europe. And really throughout North America. We do quite a bit of business for the Department of Defense, and that's largely where our contracts are today, but we continue to expand and grow. I think we have 3 new businesses coming on board in the next 10 to 12 months that'll add new disciplines. And we're all about building capability, capacity, business acumen, and access to capital for the tribe to really set our next generation and the next 7 generations up for success. Our mission is to cultivate business ventures that turn opportunity into success for the Forest County Pottawatomie.
Kip, I have one question. Now we've sort of established where the tribe is, and we've established the size of the economic development of what Pottawatomie Ventures is. Can you tell us a little bit the difference or maybe the separation between, even though the tribe has developed Pottawatomie Ventures, it's still a little bit separate. Can you sort of explain what that structure, what is the relationship with the actual tribe, and
Sure.
maybe give us some of that aspect of it?
Will do. So we follow the Harvard model on American Indian economic development, which basically provides an outline or a structure that, if followed, is going to create the greatest opportunity for success for tribes. Now, tribes are political and government organized, right? We have the general council of our tribe, which is the 1,700 tribal members. They elect an executive council. There's 6 members there: chairman, vice chair, treasurer, secretary, and then 2 at-large council members that oversee day-to-day operations of the government. They have all the interaction with, healthcare, housing, services, elder care, education, anything that has to do with providing services to tribal members. They also oversee our gaming operations. So when they created us as a tribally chartered corporation, it can also be called Section 17 corporation, an instrumentality of the tribe, but they purposely created a separation. We have our own board of directors, which is appointed by the tribe. We operate all of our businesses independent. Many of them are LLCs, but it's very purposeful to protect the corporation from the government risk, from government politics, from sort of that day-to-day kind of spillover that could occur and impact our business. So our board, provides that governance. And then as a management team, we provide the day-to-day operations to ensure that, we're following our strategic plan, our budget, which is approved, each year by our board of directors. So it's really, really purposeful on creating that, corporate veil and that separation so that everything we do, we can operate at the pace of business and not at government, but also any risk, any potential, failures, it doesn't impact the tribal.
Great. Yeah. I think that's a fascinating model. And you're just one of, and I'm going to probably guess, because not every tribe has enterprises like you've described, but I would say at least a good 80% is just a good estimation of sort of the vastness of what the tribal community and tribal businesses look like. And these are just the businesses that are owned by the tribal government. The National Center, we also work with individual businesses. So the work that Erin and I do and Kip oversees as a board member is that we connect, we provide support resources for those businesses, whether it's a business like Kip runs with the 15 subsidiaries, all the way to maybe an entrepreneur who says, "Hey, I have an idea and I need some support in developing that idea." And then we work with everybody in between. Kip, thank you so much. Was there anything else you wanted to maybe add to the crowd? Maybe give anything that I might have missed? Maybe talk a little. You're a board member to the Potawatomi Gun Lake Investments, right? You have a connection to Gun Lake Investments? Could you talk a little bit about why that was set up and what that is?
Sure, absolutely. So in the U.S., if you go back, several hundred years, there used to be just one great Potawatomi nation. Obviously, with the Removal Act and when tribes were moved to the west and then eventually the south, and some of the tribal membership went up into Canada. The Potawatomi split up, right? And so there are 8 federally recognized Potawatomi tribes in the lower 48 of the U.S. We're all independent sovereign nations, but we all recognize that we come from the same Potawatomi nation. So we do have an annual gathering. There's also, I think, 4 different Potawatomi First Nations up in Canada, and we maintain regular communication for culture and traditions, and again, we gather to keep our language alive and to pass it on to the next generation. But one of the tribes that I'm referencing is the Gun Lake Potawatomi, which is called the Natawhasepi Potawatomi. They're located, Machibenatius Potawatomi, which is located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They got into this a little bit later than us. It's really been in the last 10 years that they been involved in gaming and created an economic development corporation. So I've been serving on their board for about 10 years and really helping them to accomplish the same thing that we are. And this is very common among Indian country here in the U.S. is for tribes, as we grow and expand and accumulate all of this knowledge and experiences, to share it with our fellow tribes around us so that they can thrive. And so that's one of the things I've been doing. You'll find a lot of these tribal corporations have very similar goals. They have very similar structures and pursue federal government contracting, commercial businesses, and then passive investments, much like a family office or maybe a private equity firm. And so I've been working with them as well. And the National Center has been instrumental too in creating that culture, that ecosystem where we meet and we talk. Like next week is our annual convention. We're probably scheduled to meet with 12 different tribes while we're there. Our board will be there, our council, our team, and it's just a great place to do business together and pursue similar opportunities. So that's part of it as well.
Thank you so much, Kip. I really appreciate your support and that sort of explanation. I really wanted folks, because a lot of times when we approach um, when we're trying to meet different groups, sometimes we make assumptions that everybody knows exactly what we do, but I wanted to really get some explanation of what it looks like for a tribally owned corporation. So thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely. Thank
And feel
you.
free to jump in. I'm going to talk a few other things, so feel free to jump in, and then we're going to open up the webinar to questions in just a couple of minutes. But Missy had sent me a few questions already, so I wanted to just go through some of those very high level here. We don't want to just talk you guys to death, because I do want this to be a discussion, and I want you guys to be able to ask us questions. So the first thing is about strengthening indigenous to indigenous trade and investments, and I think this is really one of the core keys of what we're really wanting to do. We have partnerships in already established in Canada. I have both been doing a lot of work with the First Nations community and starting partnerships, not only supporting those businesses as they look for opportunities in the United States, we're also supporting our businesses as they look for opportunities across seas. So that's really the idea of supporting that indigenous to indigenous trade. Really, all of our communities know what trade routes are, and for thousands and thousands of years, we've had trade routes. So creating new indigenous trade routes so that we have these direct channels for trade, for doing business together, for looking for other opportunities. We all share a direct cultural foundation, right? We have, even though we are very, different time zones and very far from each other in distance, we still have a shared cultural foundation of how the Maori and how United States tribes build their business. So there's lots of potential opportunities there. And as well as policy advocate, I threw the policy advocacy in. That's another thing that the National Center does. That's something that a lot of the tribal communities do, because I know that New Zealand has a different political system than it once was. When I was there in August, the political system may not have been friendly as it once was. We are now sort of facing a new political reality here in the United States. Again, learning how to navigate with a new government, a new administration. So we're in some very similar policy advocacy between our two nations, just with two different governments. One of the things folks had mentioned about is corporate relations and private sector engagement. The National Center has a corporate advisory board. We work with 17 U.S. Companies, including Google, Walmart, Nike, Alaska Airlines, and many, many more. Part of that work is supporting their supply chains. How are we getting more native businesses into doing work in those companies? A lot of our business, as Kip sort of described, do government contracting, and they're working directly with the federal government. Now we're also giving paths into Fortune 500 companies. So really building, Lockheed Martin's one of our big partners in defense. So if some of our businesses that we work with at the National Center are doing work with the United States government, they can easily do work with one of the publicly traded companies throughout. So we're really building that partnership, and I know that Maori businesses also have that corporate relationship, and Amotai does a really good job of introducing that direct, so that building those supply chains and creating that corporate relationship and private sector engagement. Another question came up is business to business trade between our enterprises. And I think that's, again, goes back to that creating direct trade routes, creating these partnerships. I mentioned today is sort of phase one of a multi-phase opportunity. So we hope Erin and I will actually be in New Zealand meeting with folks with businesses, meeting with different tribes in New Zealand, and really being there as not only a resource, but meeting some of you, getting some of your capacity, talking about how we can introduce our businesses to your businesses. What opportunities are there jointly that we can do together between Maori businesses and United States businesses? So we'll be there in April is phase one. We'll also come back in August for phase two, where we'll be at the conference, Amotai conference. And hopefully we'll be bringing some of our businesses, hopefully KIP, but if not, maybe some representatives from their businesses. But our goal is to bring about 10 companies to United States and do some introductions where we can actually do some meeting and direct some direct partnership. Hopefully, even maybe there's some potential deals that could be made there. And then lastly, phase three would be inviting as many businesses to our Reservation Economic Summit in 2026, where you'll be able to even meet with more opportunities there. We'll be having matchmaking, indigenous to indigenous matchmaking, and really opening that up. So that's really our B2B initiative and our plans through this partnership. I'm looking through the questions because I know we're sort of running on time, and I want to turn it over back over to Missy. So, Missy, why don't I still turn it back over to you to maybe open up some of the question and answers, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
You've done an amazing job there, Chris.
Is your sound off? Turn your sound off. Sorry, there we go. Stop that echo. And thank you, Kip. That was really insightful hearing about what you're doing with your tribal entities there. I think I know we've got some experienced businesses here who are trading in the US. I'd really like to welcome them to maybe join the conversation and share their experience in dealing with the US. I do recognise Jojo. Would you like to introduce yourself, Jojo?
Yeah, no mai haere mai, tēnā. My name is Joanne McKecken. I'm from the Ngaitahu Iwi, and I'm based in Seattle, Washington. And I have the privilege of already being able to do some work with some of your people. We have a partnership we're setting up a partnership with the Puyallup people from Washington State, and they're looking to do an exchange with us in education. My work is in changing outcomes for children and their communities. And so we have a group who are already doing a transfer for next year. I've just met with the Winnebago people, the Ho-Chunk tribe, and we're just negotiating a little bit of a deal about how we can work together for education. I guess my work has been really based in coming from New Zealand, working for education system, principal teacher, working for the Ministry of Education. I then became an entrepreneur at the ripe old age of 45. And then from that time on, I've been able to start to really develop my business across. And we have a team in Australia, a team in New Zealand, a team in the US, working with schools and systems, utilising the curriculum that is based on indigenous knowledge. I think that's the best way to say it. And as I talked about doing the work, I've learned as I've gone as well. And I think that my people, in particular, Te Pāuraka Hautu, the kura in Christchurch, New Zealand, who is my guide, they've taught me how to do this work. So it's really exciting to be able to work with tribes over here to share the knowledge we have. Our education system, our Māori schools, we have consistently performed above every other group of schools in our leaving data for the last 12 years. So I think we've got something that we might want to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I think what I was really surprised when I got the registrations come through at the different sectors that from New Zealand that are operating in the US already and Australia, and really for us what we're wanting to do within Amotai is help to identify those strong connections and how we can actually connect with NCAIED for that trip in August. I do see Holly's got her hand up. Kia ora, Holly.
O tēnā tātou, ko Holly Bea tōku ingoa. My name is Holly. I'm a lobbyist here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I really appreciate Chris, Erin, Kip, your time today. My question is hopefully a relatively simple one because I did want to get some insight on what your perspectives are in terms of early stage investing and like indigenous entrepreneurs' journey. Because one of the things is the access to capital in America is vast, and Aotearoa not so much. Do you guys have an approach in terms of how much you're choosing to invest and what an ownership stake looks like in the business that you're investing in? Because I'm keen to understand when it's about self-determination, what that looks like in terms of taking as much as you can or just what you should take.
Kip, can you, it seems like you're ready to answer that question.
Sure, I'll give it a shot. You know, we've invested in a number of early stage businesses, and probably more so in the last few years, just because there's a pretty strong tech ecosystem growing in Milwaukee, and where we are, you know, one of the goals of the tribe is to really support the local community and also not only you know, people of color, Native entrepreneurs, but just, you know, really be supportive of that tech community. So we don't always have to have majority interest. We'll take minority stake for sure. I mean, you know, it could be, you know, anywhere from 5 to 15% in something. If it looks like it's of interest to us and it meets our goals, and you know, we'll take a stake in it. Recently launched an innovation center. It's still early stage, and we're putting together a business plan around that. We've got a really bright young tribal member who has come into our business to help us lead that, and she's just getting started with that. So yeah, we're definitely interested in looking at you know, early stage businesses. You know, venture capital is of interest to us. We can't do everything, but we definitely want to make that a major part of our portfolio as we go forward as well.
And Holly, for the National Center's perspective, we are establishing a loan fund. So we're right in the beginning of the development of this. And this is really, we work with about 4,000 clients throughout the United States. Some of those we do opportunities to traditional banking institutions, or we provide them introductions and help them find access to various capital. And it could be an investor as well. We've done last July, Erin and I did an event in New York City where we brought many investors together to meet with some of our clients who are looking to invest directly into those businesses. However, you know, the opportunity to find access to capital of just lending, you know, having working capital loans, having other loans where you can actually expand your business is something that we are developing and hope to start lending in 2026.
Kia ora. Thank you, Holly, for that question. Sorry. Heaven. Stephen Renata from Kiwa, do you have a question you wanted to jump in there? I'd love to hear your sharing from another sector.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Steve Renata tōku ingoa. Kia ora, Chris, Erin and Kip. Lovely to meet you online. The team and I at Kiwa Digital are fortunate to already have a established business relationship with Cherokee Nation. I noticed you mentioned the Cherokee there, Chris. It sort of happened a little bit serendipitously, but they contacted us about some technology they were interested in, and then we felt it was appropriate to get on an aeroplane and fly over to Oklahoma City and meet them. And it's been a fantastic relationship. It's very early days, but we're looking forward to being up in the US more and more, and sharing insights and bringing some of those home as well. But I don't have any questions. Just very grateful to actually be in the game.
Awesome.
Kia ora.
Awesome. Another sector I do recognise on here, Te Pā Wines. Are you still there, Hazley?
Kia ora, yes, I am here. Missy, nice to be on this call with Chris, Erin, and Kip, and the rest of you guys. Look, yeah, we are exporting into the US, have been for probably close to 10 years now. I guess in the wine sector that we're in, we're facing challenges all the time, both here at home and the complicated model that we seem to experience up there, the 3-tier system, and how you navigate around that. That's always been a challenge. I guess some of the real struggles that we sort of tend to come up against is that in our industry, we have the large corporates from all over the globe here in our industry, and basically have led us down a commodity path that's not desirable for us, as we're such a small nation. So we've got to try and stand out from the crowd, and since I guess our wines, our logo, our story, our history is resonating with the people in the US, and so they are looking for something other than just a brand that's just been slapped on a bottle and put into the market. So we are still slowly growing over there, but are always looking for an opportunity and to be able to partner with indigenous people in the USA would be really much appreciated. And I think I travel up there quite a lot. One of the real concerns that I see, not only in the US but the world, is the use of our trademarks, our iconography, our names. I see many a wine label sitting in the US market with our tribal names on it, and that's quite a slap in the face. So protection around some of our names, our places, and that is a must in all markets. But the US, there's some pretty big players that use the dartboard approach and use our names. So any help in that area would be much appreciated. But yeah, it's a growing market for us and for most of us here in New Zealand and Marlborough.
I thank you so much. One of the sectors that an emerging sector that we have in the United States is the wine and beer and distillery. Many of our tribes are creating their own brand, and they are also having that protection of that of their name and of that brand. I think there's also an opportunity, Hazley, that maybe we have a lot of nice restaurants and nice established casinos, and a lot of our casinos are looking for indigenous partners from around the world to feature, something like a New Zealand wine. So I think that's one of the opportunities that maybe we can look into the future. Erin and I've worked on agriculture as well. Erin's been to some of our native-owned vineyards in California and Oregon, I believe, at least in California. So there could be some connection there too. When we have we also have some very luxury resorts and golf courses. Again, maybe looking for those connections. So that's the type of things that we're hopefully being able to do and make those introductions for you.
Oh, look, that sounds brilliant, Chris, and love to get your details and chat further on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Tamati, kia ora.
Kia ora, Chris. Sorry, I was a little bit too late. I was in with some packaging partners that we've got a food show for one of the supermarkets here tomorrow. Really interested in the kōrero. I only caught the last bit of it. So I've got a sister company based out of Dallas, Texas. My business partner, James Eho, has got a company up there called Catology. Here we're Conscious Foods. We do a whole range of products that's around diabetes prevention and remission using nutrition. And I've seen some of the stuff that we've tried to do is looking at our international partnerships around licensing, working with communities. Here we're taking supply through various Māori industry, but one of the challenges that I guess we've always tried to do is work with indigenous manufacturing partners. So when we've looked at here in Australia, Not always been the easiest because we don't have the necessary meat processing and things. Is that something that would potentially be a strength within the First Nations community, where you're processing your own cattle and potentially distribution channels? So my business partner with Catology, they were in 1,000 stores across the states doing their supplements. But I know from my conversations with him that he's had very, very little interaction within the First Nations communities, and particularly with some of the regulatory changes that are coming through with seed oils. I think there's some really interesting shared knowledge and potential licensing opportunities or investment opportunities for him, and I guess from what we're doing as well. So ran it at 100 miles an hour, but yeah, our whole business kaupapa is based around nutritional change and helping people with health issues and sustainability.
Well, I think that's Tamati, that's a great entryway into some of the work that the National Center is doing as well. Food sovereignty is such a big thing where we know where our food is coming from. So that we do have some really strong partners and even other nonprofit organizations that are working on that specific thing. Happy to provide their details and definitely I think they're even they may even be working with some already New Zealand companies as well. But when you had mentioned about the meat processing plants, that is a little bit of a new thing for our tribes to get into because we have a lot of our tribes have our own very specific beef or bison. So they have to go through United States through the United States Agriculture Department processing plant. So now a few tribes have developed their own. Cherokee Nation is one example where they've developed their own processing. So that is happening in the United States. And we think it'll continue to grow. It's far, a little, not as many as we would like to see, but it is happening. So again, I think that's a great opportunity for growth and collaboration, and especially if you have diabetes in our community our community is one of the largest by numbers of diabetes. So making sure that we know where our food's coming from, but also developing safely and food to help combat that disease. So happy to again those are the types of things we love to hear and would love to collaborate on.
Thank you. That's awesome. Appreciate it.
Kia ora. Tom.
Kia ora, thanks, Misty. Kia ora, everyone. I'm Tom, and my line of work, I'm a bid consultant. So my focus is on helping businesses to win government contracts, and that's all I do. My question to you, Chris, Erin, and Kip is, what do you see as perhaps the biggest challenges to indigenous businesses trying to win work or win those contracts? So, for example, in New Zealand, a big struggle is having companies that are just growing and they're trying to get into that tier 2 or that tier 1 level, and they just don't have that knowledge or the strategy and the tactics to win those contracts. So I'd be keen to know what you see as some of the big challenges for your indigenous businesses.
Kip, why don't you start? I know you're some of your companies are directly there working with the federal government on contracting, so I'd love to hear your perspective.
Sure, absolutely. I think we learned this sort of the hard way when we first started is really having opportunity, access, and being able to demonstrate that past performance. It took some time to develop that. And I see a lot of that happening around Indian country where tribes are getting certified, but then struggling to get some of the first contracts because they don't have that network, that knowledge, that access. So working really closely with the SBA to determine that, doing some teaming, some joint ventures, and having a willingness to say, look, I may not get all of the profits that I want to get out of this deal, but I'm willing to do that because I need to build up my past performance. So I think we're seeing a lot of similarities in the U.S. than what you're seeing there with whether it's tribes or individual native-owned businesses that are maybe struggling, and first few years to really get some of those first contracts. And so having some of that same challenge as well.
Yeah, Tom, and I totally agree with Kip on that. We service 26 states, 30 states where we work directly with Native-owned businesses who are trying to do work with the federal government. So we have teams of people they're called Apex Accelerators, and they work with close to 50 tribes and their tribal members on developing their business enterprises. And where we see though too, on an advocacy piece, I mean, we are both Kip and I advocate a whole lot for what's called the U.S. Small Business Administration 8A program, and that is it really helps our tribal enterprise businesses as well as individuals get direct set aside contracts. So they may not. They may not have to compete against everyone. They may be able, if they have the capacity to do the work, they could get some direct get that contract directly from the federal government. But every time Congress changes, every time an administration changes, there's a lot of education to protect that program. Both Kip and I and Erin are on the forefront of protecting that program because we do see it as a great advantage for our tribes and our individual tribal citizens, and just some opportunities there too. And Kip had sort of mentioned how many joint ventures that they have, but there's opportunity, for a U.S. business and a Maori business to have a joint venture and do some work in that sphere. So that's sort of some of my thoughts, and I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, thanks for that. I know through JVs, that's quite a good step in for these smaller businesses, saddle up with someone that's bigger and stronger and has that track record, and then you start to build it from there. So thanks very much.
Absolutely.
Who's next? I think it was Lilia.
Awesome. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Talofa to you all, our manuhiri from overseas. My name's Yulia Leilua, and I'm the leader of the Culture and Design Lab. We're a communications, culture and design company, and we help corporate and government leaders maximise their engagements with Māori and Pacific peoples. So my question is, how do you measure the return on investment of indigenous ways of doing business that shows your unique point of difference?
Ooh, that's a tough question. So, a lot of times I think how, for us, a lot of our measurement is already required by the funding that we get. So a lot of times the measurements, when we do our reports and everything as an organization, that measurement often is sometimes how many folks we're working with. We have an export program, and it's that measurement is how many dollars do those businesses receive from various contracts. So it's not quite the cultural aspect of measurement. For us, I think we want to build that in. Everything that we do at the National Center is around developing our culture along with developing our business. And so that's one of the things on measurement. Kip or Erin, do you have any thoughts around that?
So I would say one way for us to measure that is we do an annual dividend back to the tribe, and then they use those dollars. And they've done a couple of things with them. They've either returned them directly to the tribal membership, or they've also turned them over to things like education and training development. We've done internships. We've got a number of college students that are coming into our organization in the form of internships where we can teach them about business, but also teach them about the tribe's traditions, culture, practices, get them involved in attending events, learning the language, being a part of the overall culture so that that continues to get passed on and just doesn't, people just don't become complacent. I think that's one way we do it. I would say in a lot of ways we've been heads down, focusing on how do we keep growing the business and keep growing our profitability and getting larger. But at the same time, what you brought up is also really important, because our elders asked us the same question, right? How are we taking care of our culture and our traditions and making sure that these things get passed on and attended to without just being focused on profitability. So those are some of the things that we're doing.
Ngā mihi, malo lava.
Good.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Last question, Amber. Kia ora, Amber.
Kia ora koutou. Hello everyone, my name is Amber Taylor. I am the CEO and co-founder of a digital tech company called Other Journeys. Now we specialise in using immersive technology, so your augmented reality, virtual reality. We combine that with artificial intelligence and gamification to bring Indigenous stories to life. Our company mission is to flood the world with Indigenous stories, knowledge and languages, because we are now at a critical state where 40% of our 6,700 spoken languages are in danger of disappearing completely. So we are very passionate about our work. We work at a global level at the moment. So we currently have education programs running across Europe as well as in Asia, and we're doing a tourism project in Japan that starts this year. But I was also part of the first Indigenous to Indigenous trade delegation to come over to the States back in 2023. So we spent some time on the reservation with the Pequot Nation. Got to experience the powwow and met with their council members over there. So it was a great opportunity to actually explore the similarities between the tribal nations and the Māori culture, which was just such a heartwarming experience. My question is really more around how do we become a part of phase 1 of your visit that's coming up in April, and grab some one-to-one time with you so that we can not only share what we're doing, but learn more about what you're looking to do in that cultural heritage preservation and education space.
Yeah, well, thank you, Amber. That's an easy one. I guess, just reach out to us, because we'll be looking for partners. We'll be working very closely with Amotai and our other partners as well. So we'll make sure that you have all of our contact information. Missy can send it around. We'll be starting. We right now, as Kip sort of alluded to, we have our annual conference coming up called Reservation Economic Summit. It is the world's largest Indigenous economic conference in the world. We're expecting about 5,000 attendees. And that's next week. So we're a little bit busy focusing on that conference. So as soon as that conference is over, Erin and I will start focusing on our trip to New Zealand. We won't be able to meet with everyone, but we'll try to meet with as many businesses as we can. And geographically, we'll need some help, Missy, on that, or you guys will have to help us. But yeah, and definitely something like your technology that you mentioned. I mean, that is, technology. It's very cutting edge. With the virtual reality ability, you can transport, as you even alluded to, transport yourself into the ancient world, into different languages, even have a cultural tourism experience without ever leaving your house. So I think there are opportunities. We have a tourism program that we launched last July, so that could be an opportunity to provide you with introductions to various tribal tourism departments. We just released a magazine. We have what's called NC magazine. So our last issue was all about tourism and tourism within the United States. So there's lots of opportunities. So yes, we'd love to meet with anyone, based on our time allowance. So you'll have our contact, and Charmaine and Erin on my team can help. We can help this, put that calendar together. And then again, if it doesn't happen in April, we can also look at August as well.
Perfect. Also, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the WITSE conference is coming up and being hosted here in Aotearoa as well. So WITSE is the World Indigenous Peoples Education Conference. And think from memory that's going to be here in November, but that might be worth checking out as well if you are planning to come over.
Great, thank you.
Kia ora.
Ka Poaty, well, ka Poaty wā. Thank you so much for being able to come through and have a kōrero with our NCAIED whānau, Erin, Chris and Kip. Erin, Chris and Kip, e rere ana te mihi mai o hai mihi aroha ki a koutou. I te tohoto ana tō pakahi, tō mātauranga, pūtea, mātauranga investment. It's been a wonderful kind of kōrero and download to hear from you all in the different spaces, and even in the tribal indigenous space that you're heavily involved in, Kip. And, you know, we think about where some of those tribal enterprises are, and we think very closely to our iwi enterprises back home, and some of our iwi, you know, Joanne, you know, referenced one of our wealthier iwis as well. You know, how do we get into that space where we are really trying to maximize the opportunities and the resources that we have to benefit, you know, our tribal members as best we can. Really acknowledge our suppliers that have come through today and that have shared their stories, shared their, you know, tono, their invitation to work with our NCAIED whānau, and really, you know, again, thankful to Chris, James and Kip for accepting those invitations. I mean, I was kind of leading over to Miss, like, man, how are we going to make this work, Miss? Because we've got like 40 or so businesses on here, and I'm sure that, you know, our NCAIED whānau want to work with everybody and do what we can. It's been really quite interesting in the Amotai space. Myself, Missy, we met with the Canadian High Commissioner a couple of weeks ago. Myself and Sarah, we hosted the First Nations Ambassador from Australia last Friday. And this indigenous to indigenous trade route is something that's really starting to come to us in the fore. And with the political and the corporate landscape that we're all facing right now in the procurement space, I did kind of say this to the First Nations Ambassador Muhammad. I was like, what can we control within our sphere? And this is an example of what we can control. We can control our tribal entities coming together. We can control the opportunities and creating those trade routes that Chris talked about for, you know, wines, man. I'd love to see te pā wines over in luxury resorts and golf resorts over there. I'm sure you see a lot more Māori whānau going over to those golf courses. We've got all these Māori golf content creators nowadays that want to go over them, you know, promo that stuff. But it's a really exciting space to be in with, you know, our indigenous to indigenous whānau. So I guess wrapping that up into whānau, as Chris mentioned, you know, if you want to get over to Vegas, if you're still there, you got whānau over there from the Warriors, you know, the Warriors debacle on the weekend. Tell them to hang around. Tell them to go over to Chris and them's awesome conference and see it firsthand. See it firsthand what indigenous business looks like over there in the States. For us, maybe next year, you know, we can meet with Te Taumata and we can maybe look at an awesome delegation. Anna was invited to go over there this year, but wasn't able to get there. But hopefully we can look at some spaces there. So we're getting a knock on the door for our room. We'll just quickly close up, but we will keep in contact with you all regarding the agenda for April and how we can kind of start connecting the face-to-face with Chris, Kip and Erin, whoever comes over from the NCAIED whānau. So, e rene anta mihi anō kia tātou, i te whakakapi o tātou hui, ka kare kia tātou, mi noi tātou. Unuhia te uru tapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te ngākau, te hinengaro, te wairo, te tinane, te aratangata. Koia e rongo kia whakairia, ki rongo kia teina, haumi hui e, tai ki.
Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for coming along. We look forward to keeping in touch with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you,
Thanks, Kip.
Chris. Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Erin. Fantastic.